let's move on, see if we can hammer out a couple more callers. We have a religious caller. His name's Andrew. He's in Florida. Andrew, you're live with Eric and Drew. How are you doing?
Greetings, gentlemen. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. So before we dive into your question, you just listened to an entire conversation about canon and about the Catholic Church to which you belong. Is there anything that you want to talk about with that before we get into your question?
Sure. Yeah, just coincidence. No, I agree with him historically speaking. A lot of the claims to the canon are theological claims. So on purely historical basis, I don't disagree with anything Drew said.
Cool. Okay. So then I'll dive right into your question. It says here in the comments, why does atheism promote cohabitation? And it sounds like you're not a fan of cohabitation. Talk to us about it. What's going on?
Yeah. I don't know why. I don't know what the connection is like. Okay, we realize, okay, we don't have any evidence for God. Therefore, now most atheists believe that cohabitation is a better option than waiting until marriage. I don't know I don't see the connection, but I do see a lot of atheists or secular people with that view. I would just like to quote two studies to show why it's a negative thing. Statement one, cohabitating couples have higher odds of divorce than married couples, even after controlling for factors such as age, education, income, and race, according to a secular study by Brown and colleagues in the Journal of Marriage and Family. So do we have time for me to state the second statement, or are we going to stick with that one?
Well, I'd love to respond to that first and then let you get to the second one.
Sure.
So people who aren't married, who are cohabitating together, and then they split up, I think that's a good thing. Personally. I think that if you are living with somebody, you're getting the chance to find out what kind of person they are. If you're going on a date, you don't necessarily know that person has no idea how to wash their own laundry and their parents have been doing it. You have no idea if that person is a slob or is casually just terrible in a whole lot of different ways. There are so many things that happen when you live with somebody that if you get the chance to live with them and find out that, oh my gosh, this isn't going to work, then the whole point, I think, there is you have the chance to get out while you can. I don't imagine that the idea of people splitting up because they've gotten the chance to drive the car before buying it is a bad thing. I think that is a effect of that working the way I would hope it would. Drew, do you have anything?
Yeah, I think that we have to challenge the implicit assumption that divorce is inherently a bad thing in all cases. I'm sure that, I know that the Catholic Church has pretty strong taboos and doctrine against divorce, but I'm sure that you would agree that there are certain cases where divorce is probably actually best for both people. You probably think that it might be fewer cases than I think, but fine. I think that we would still agree on this. Operating on that premise, then, can't we see that if we're not making, divorce completely synonymous with a negative outcome, not assuming that it's negative, we could see in that study that, yeah, and I believe you. I think that the data, I've read that before. I think that study is accurate, but it's pretty understandable that people that do not have a taboo against splitting up would split up more often than people who do have a taboo against it. But because we know that divorce is not inherently a negative thing, sometimes people are escaping abuse, sometimes people are escaping something like cheating, or people are escaping a situation which just makes both of them worse people or less happy. That's not a bad thing. So yeah, I mean, Catholics probably do less cohabitation and less divorce, but I would also venture to guess that Catholics would be less likely to divorce when divorce might actually be a good thing to do.
Okay. So a question then, why does it happen after the marriage? If the point of cohabitation is to see if you're compatible and then get married, why more divorce if you're waiting, if you're cohabitating first to see if you're compatible? Why doesn't the breakup happen before the marriage? because that was what people always told me. Oh, how can you marry someone if you never lived with them? But if you live with them first, you're most likely going to get a divorce.
Interesting. Well, I've got a couple of guesses that I would love to see kind of borne out in studies, but I think there are two big pieces there. One of them is the sample set. I think if you have somebody who has waited to live with the person that they want to marry until they marry them, I think they're probably more likely to have taken on a religious ideology that looks down on divorce. And so I think that there might be some skewing of the sample set there. And then,
I would agree. That's a huge factor.
And then second, I think that I personally know and have known people who've stayed in horribly abusive relationships, but stayed with the person that they were with because religiously they were not able to get out, right? They were not able to leave that person they were with. I think that if you do that, if you cohabitate with somebody and test that out and then find out it's not working for you, maybe you might be just a little more comfortable with going, hey, Andrew?
Yeah.
There's some banging in the background and you have I have ADHD. If there's a way that if you're doing dishes or something, could you hold off until after we're done?
Yeah, for sure.
Appreciate it. So yeah, the other thing is if you can go, oh, hey, I don't need to stay with somebody, especially if it's not working, then maybe that is a more accessible option. And again, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
But did you want to talk about the other study, or did you want to talk kind of more on the specifics of why it's bad to cohabitate?
Yeah, we can do the other.
Yeah,
we can do that other study.
It's your call. You should have the opportunity to guide. What's next?
Sure. Thanks. It says cohabitating couples report lower levels of relationship satisfaction, commitment, and trust than married couples, according to a study by Rhodes and colleagues. Rhodes G.K. Stanley, a replication of extension and previous findings. Oh, Journal of Family Psychology.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that again, it's a sampling issue there. And I mean, not an issue. It doesn't mean that the study's not valid or something, but yeah, I mean, people who cohabitate, let's say people who live together, in order to kind of like try it out, may not be in the same place within their relationship as people who are married necessarily. I think that people who choose to get married, it's pretty understandable that regardless of whether they've done this for religious reasons or not, if they're making some sort of long-standing commitment to each other, like lifelong commitment, that kind of behavior probably selects for relationships that are a little bit more confident. So it would make sense that, yeah, people who decide to get married are people who have, when they are cohabitating beforehand, a more confident, more stable relationship. So that's how I would typically see it. It's not an effect of cohabitation, and it's not an effect of marriage either. It's just that what we're seeing in the married sample there are people who, when cohabitating, or maybe not cohabitating beforehand, were more confident in their relationship, had better relationship prospects in the first place, so they chose to get married.
I'm not sure. What do you think, Andrew?
I just, if I see, I'm just trying to make the connection. Like, okay, atheism. Okay, I believe there's no evidence for God. Therefore, now cohabitation is a more positive outcome. Or like, if we see all these studies with negative attributes of cohabitation, then isn't it just better to just say cohabitation is not better? Like, what's the connection with that and atheism or secularism?
Sure. So, as a Catholic, I think that you would probably agree that there's a whole lot more than just the God question that's taught to you in church, right?
Of course.
It permeates so many different parts of your lives, including your politics in a lot of ways. As a believer, I was told that marriage was something between one man and one woman, and it was being taught in the face of a lot of anti-gay sentiment, right? my concept of marriage and what I thought made a good or bad marriage, I think was something that after I'd left my religion no longer held a lot of weight, because all of a sudden the reason I was basing my opinions on things, because God said it or because I heard it in church, and that, is part of what the community that I was in espoused, that wasn't there anymore. And so I did have the chance to question it. And there are a lot of atheists and a lot of non-believers who will leave their church, but never question the things that they learned in church that aren't just the God thing. Like what you're talking about, right? When it comes to cohabitation, even. I think that you're going to find that a lot of secular people and non-believers are going to vary in their views, but it does appear to make a lot more sense in the long run for people to get a good idea of what they're signing up for before they sign up for it, especially if they're going to, strive to keep that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that ultimately what I'm seeing here, and thanks to V in the chat for kind of pointing this out, I think with the reading of the studies and, believing that you're basically seeing that cohabitation causes negative outcomes and that marriage causes positive outcomes, and also that atheism causes cohabitation, I'm not so sure that there's a causal relationship there so much as a correlational relationship there. And if you find research that says that there is a causal relationship there, that, marriage is actually just the ceremony of marriage makes things better and cohabitation makes things worse, there's an actual causal relationship, I would love to see that. That would be very interesting. And I think would probably make your point better than the evidence that you have here. But I wouldn't say that it's so much, atheism promoting living together rather than getting married or before getting married. I think that what you're seeing is the Catholic Church and Christian church generally promotes marriage as the exclusive option of human, like, romantic or sexual relationships, when the vast majority of cultures throughout time, philosophical and religious ideas throughout time have not done that, have not done the same thing. So it's not that atheism is saying we need to live together before getting married. I am married and I prefer it, and it doesn't have anything to do with my atheism. That's how it is. I just think that it's honestly more of a human default to not go through a very ultra specific religious ritual in order to bond yourself together with another person. There's not a relationship with atheism and cohabitation. You're just seeing a contrast to the relationship between marriage and Catholicism, I think.
Okay. All right.
I was not expecting this degree of communication. I thought this might get more heated. Andrew, was there anything else?
I know the heated calls are more exciting, but
so this is what I am trying to make this channel about. Like, this is what I want to see. So please, no, this is fantastic.
Andrew, you did a good job, like, presenting the studies, giving us the reference, stating, what it said. I think you did great. I've actually seen those studies before, which is one of the reasons I don't doubt those. That you did a good job, and I appreciate that. And you also seem to understand, what we're saying, and you want to talk about this again, then yeah, I'd love to.
I will take that as a chance to maybe invite Drew back another time. And Andrew, you're definitely welcome to call again. I have so many other, like, little nitpicky questions about, what motivations are behind, wanting to see a move away from cohabitation and that kind of thing. And I know that we don't have time for it today, but I would love to get the chance to explore that again in a future call.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Awesome. Andrew, have an awesome rest of your day.
Take care, gentlemen. Have a good one.
You too.
Wasn't that just the absolute antithesis of Colin show tropes?
Right? That is
Like,
go ahead.
when you get two atheists on live, you know, trying to flex for the audience, and then you have a Catholic guy call in using insider lingo that atheists can find irritating, and then citing studies to back up his point. Like, that's a recipe for disaster, or actually for very entertaining but not actually productive conversation. And I think that was good. I am very proud of Andrew and of us right now.
Right? I would gladly take the lower sub count and the lower views to have those more meaningful, more nuanced conversations, because I feel like these are the small steps that we take toward building a community together that doesn't always have to believe the same things. So
yeah,
cheers to that.